All right. A few seconds now. We're going to start. I'll be using a laptop mic. Hopefully, this will be better than using my very expensive condenser mic that seems to give me different results. So, here we go. All right. Hello. Good evening, all. Good evening. Say hi to everyone. Hi in the forum. Cool. Nice to meet everyone. Now, what we're going to do, let me actually just share my PDF. Welcome, everyone, to the Black Betterment broadcast. Now, I'm going to remove that and just click on share. I should be able to do this in record speed, but I tend to stop share. Voila, there you go. Share screen. Then you get all these pop-ups, don't you? Every time you want to do something fast. Let's find that fantastic PDF. Here we go. Oh, look, it comes up. And then we're going to do the magic of making the read mode, which only gets rid of one tab, but it doesn't matter. All right, cool. All right, so according to this is show 14, which is always good to be reminded. Hello, everyone. Tell a friend that we're on. Remember, this is the Black Betterment broadcast. This show is made for Black people to come together to work on solutions. So this show, I am merely your host. It actually is driven for and by you guys. And when I say you guys, that's the Black community who are seeking betterment. That's what it's for. So now you're here. Remember, in the early days, you guys are part of the building. So all those who are live and those who watch the stream and stuff, you're part of the process in actually improving the condition of Black people locally and globally. Right. Hopefully you can hear me. Now we're going to go through how we normally start. What we're looking at. All right. So after much research, I've unfortunately concluded that currently, Black people are collectively inadequate, which is very shocking information I say week to week. And this is driving the reason why shows like this have to exist. Collectively, there's challenges. Individually, we see some remarkable activities and behaviors and all that, and that kind of good stuff. But unfortunately, when it comes to actually utilizing those particular skills and those particular ideas as a collective force to guarantee tangible benefits, we kind of fall short of the mark. And that's why it's necessary for us to try to find solutions after that realization. Now, in this show, what we're going to do is we're going to be tackling a lot of heavy issues, usually, sometimes light issues. But generally, we're going to push forward something known as the 4D values. Now, what are the 4D values? That's discipline, dedication, dignity, and discernment. Now, using these four things as a collective, as a people, hopefully we can actually reach solutions in a more, digestible way and potentially lower anxiety. And we'll talk about some topics that might be more heart-filled in some people's, body and stuff, whatever, right? So let's go on. So what is Black Betterment? Black Betterment is Black people helping Black people on Black issues for betterment. So the whole premise of this show is this fantastic black and white screen here is Black people helping Black people, on Black issues, that's what it is. Now we can make that even more simpler because, sometimes you have to make things simple, don't you? And that to make that more simpler, we can say it's simply this. Black Betterment is a lifestyle. So this show is about Black Betterment. And what is Black Betterment? It's a lifestyle. And what is a lifestyle? What if I hear you say? Well, the lifestyle is Black people helping Black people on Black issues for betterment. That's it. Right. So now we've got through the basics, the starting. Just to remind everyone how the format works. Basically, I talk for a small amount of time, and then I invite people to come in and join, and then they can give their 10 pence piece on the topic, or maybe introduce a new one potentially. Sometimes what we do, some people might contact me privately and say, is it okay if I start a show? And they're always welcome. So someone else might want to start the show, have a 5-minute, 10-minute topic about anything they choose, as long as it is geared towards Black betterment or highlighting areas that maybe Black people need to improve upon, or ways to improve upon. And then they're always welcome. As long as you're Black, you're welcome to have your say. This show is about us. So that is the basic premise. Now, after I've spoken or the guests have spoken, then I push out a link and people can jump in. And it doesn't matter if you're a regular or you haven't done before, you're always welcome on. What I'm trying to do in these early days is give new people the confidence to come on and say their opinions. Sometimes it can be nerve-wracking, sometimes. But we're trying to create a community environment where people feel, comfortable to jump on. And as time goes by, I'm going to invite some of the normal speakers who I might meet when I go out in the world to speak, Speakers Corner and certain debates and stuff. But for now, it's more so trying to get new people who don't necessarily turn up to those events. And I can understand that sometimes when you watch some of the stuff I've been in historically, it might be quite the kind of debates I talk about and how people react sometimes might not be the most inviting circumstance to have someone talk about something they really care about. So hopefully in this particular show we can create an environment where people feel welcome, and we're not necessarily going to get in people's faces. So let's move on to today's topic with the show 14. What is today's topic? All right, empathy versus sympathy. So we're gonna start the premise. So the show's title is actually non-black empathy versus black betterment, and then a bit more blurb there. It's what is more necessary for black people: making non-black people understand black challenges or practicing black betterment. Right. So I'm going to do my normal PDF kind of like breakdown, and then I'm going to start, just adding my 10 pence piece of why I've brought this up. So let's break it down: empathy versus sympathy. All right. So empathy, experiencing the feelings of another. You have a similar personal experience and emotional connections, right? So that's what, when everyone has their own kind of way of explaining stuff, or here or there, but empathy pretty much is around about that area, right? Now, sympathy, what's that then? Understanding the suffering of another. You acknowledge another's circumstance, and recognitional connection. So what I'm breaking down here, just to make it even more simple, I try to make things simple because that helps people when things are simple. It helped me growing up. So empathy, I'm going to look at it as, okay, I've experienced what you've experienced, so I have an emotional connection. So that pushes me to try to work on solutions with you, or at least make you feel better, because I know how that felt, and that doesn't feel good. So I work with you to make sure that you, and potentially me, never feel that ever again. Now, sympathy is, I see you suffering, and I know how it is to suffer, so I want to stop that, right? So they're both, they're both honorable things. They both come from some kind of deep place of wanting better for someone else, but the motivations are completely different when you break it down. Now, why am I bringing this up? Okay, well, here's why. When I'm on YouTube and I'm, listening to my music or watching some ancient kind of documentary about something that only I seem to be interested in, I always get recommendations because I tend to look at black topics, and I see a lot of black shows and black people, and this isn't just nowadays. It's something that's happened for many years, whatever. I tend to notice that many black people seem to be very, very motivated and interested in trying to get non-black people on board when it comes to finding solutions for black people. And this is an interesting topic that hopefully we can expand maybe today. As time goes by, we can invite guests on and have them talk about the motivations of why they think this is necessary. And I'm sure there's fantastic reasons for it, and that's why they were always invited. But my standpoint, my angle is, unfortunately, after much research, black people are collectively inadequate. And because of that reality that I'm facing, I don't know if black people want non-black people to help because they generally think it's a good idea, or is this another symptom, a product of them being collectively inadequate? Can you see the challenges I'm facing there, of why when I'm speaking, I speak a certain way? There's many issues that make the psychology of black people very compromised, unfortunately, right? And that's, we can break down the years and years of things that happen. So it's hard for me to actually break down whether someone is doing it because generally they think it's a great strategy, or generally they really they're so defeated that they feel that they can't do anything without someone else who doesn't look like them doing it for them. Which, if that is the case, which I suspect there might be in many cases, then this is a behavioral pattern that we kind of need to correct, because it's not the correct way to seek betterment, is it? Not really, not particularly, no. So that's why I talk the way I talk, and I definitely would like to get more people on who believe this strategy. But what I notice is, non-black people get invited to these kind of cookouts or these kind of debates, and then they'll repeat some kind of very nice words and stuff, which is good, and then the focus tends to start shifting away from actually black betterment, but it happens in the most subtle of ways. And one thing you have to always observe, and something I always try to talk about, is when you look at, because I tend to not talk about racism, to be honest. I talk about black betterment. I don't talk about racism. But you can't talk about black people without mentioning racism, because the motivations behind many reasons why black people come together actually is triggered by the history and the current concept of racism, or ideas of racism, unfortunately, right? So One thing I've noticed that you will have black people who specialize in talking about racism, and then you have white people who specialize in talking about racism. And I'm using that dynamic of black and white there. Um, so you have white people and black people talking about racism and how it pretty much affects black people. Um, but you tend to notice that the highest paid speakers on the topic will be white, and also the ones who probably get given like the biggest kind of like shows and stuff will be white. And then you could probably break that down as well. Is that not then also another form of racism, where even the explaining and try to train people on what it is then given to non-black people? So there's so much things that goes on like that, and I mean it goes on for miles, right? But what I'm saying is sometimes because of this and not understanding how racism might manifest in the back of the mind, the front of the mind, or the economics or whatever it might be, when it comes to sorting out solutions and definitely leading, you kind of want to do that in isolation. You kind of want to do that in the group that's most affected by the topic you're trying to change or update. So that's why the lifestyle of Black Betterment is very important, because just by the default, Black Betterment is Black people helping Black people on Black issues. So those challenges and those hidden stuff that people might not be aware of can't really affect that, because in order for something to qualify as Black Betterment, it has to be run and spearheaded and directed by Black people. So yeah, that's why I brought that up. And I was noticing, like I was watching videos that came up, but you click on one video, it opens another video, and they have the algorithms work nowadays. Yeah, I just noticed that. And then you seem to have this historical pathology of black people wanting non-black people to understand their pain. Um, and one thing you have to remember is when it comes to being the victim of mistreatment based upon race, um, black people are, they specialize in that, right? And you can write books on it. But when it comes to mistreating people based upon race, black people are amateurs at this, and non-black people specialize in this historically, anyway. And so you can never really explain to them about racism and these things, because non-black people are the experts. They're the experts, and you have to remember that as a black person, you're not always going to be in the room when decisions are being made that deeply affect your future. So your ignorance will not keep you safe. So this is my thoughts. Now, let me just pick up everyone here. So that's me. I've done my 10-minute. There you go. Kept to the limits, right? I've done my 10-minute speech, right? My quick observance for the week. I was also going to go into the other concept, and I'll probably do that next week. But there's two concepts I'm going to do. I'll probably do it next week. But I was going to go into my other thing about whenever something that I do want. I would love to have a big debate about it, and it is that concept of the Patrick brother who saved the life of the European gentleman who went to the a protest to cause division and stuff. And I've noticed, I was looking, because I'm looking to hire violinists and celloists and trumpetists. So I'm obviously looking for black musicians who might be underrepresented in the field of music and stuff. And I'm trying to hire them for some projects I'm doing. And I'm noticing that even them, I saw there was like a honoring of the brother who saved, or I guess a suspected white supremacist life from being beaten. And that's interesting. And once again, it's showing you that our priorities and how we view things, like, the person who saved the life, I would say life. I don't think it was that severe, but the person who made sure harm didn't come to the racist, or the suspected racist, that whole event will get much more emphasis and love and media attention than people who go down there to make sure that black people have good economics, or black people are working together, black women and children not harmed. There is no kind of report on that activity. And but there is on the activity of a black man who saved a white potential racist from being harmed, from the act of actually being racist and harming others. So The reason I bring that up, and it knocks onto everything else, is because, and it comes into the back of the mind, and also the sympathy and empathy, right? uh, non-black people just don't know. Their interest is not going to be a cake towards tangibility for black people. So now, had you had a better media standpoint, a better black ownership of news and institutions, whenever black people are doing stuff, you can award them. So in the news, you'll have the non-black news, which is honoring black people who protect racists from being harmed, or whatever it might be. But then in the black news, you'll have the community who actually turn up to make sure that black women and children are not harmed, to make sure that people can protest in peace and get their opinions across. And also, black people are there to try to socially weigh up economics and how important that is when it comes to building the community. So what I'm saying is, by not owning anything, your story doesn't get told. And this moves further on to the standpoint that the Million Man March, was covered on BET, I believe, back in 95, 2095, yeah, 95. And then when they did another Million March, 5 years ago, or what it wasn't covered by anyone because there was no real black stations out to cover it because BT, is it BT? Yeah, BT was bought by a non-black company, whatever, right? So what I'm saying is, this is the thing. Black people always want non-black people to really feel their pain and understand them, but that's not that. I think that's not primary. I think the primary is having black people get on code or to practice a lifestyle that forces them to be dedicated to helping black people. This is the solution, and hopefully, if I don't do anything else in the world, I just spread that concept. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this link here in the actual group. Now, all are welcome to jump in. If no one jumps in, I'm just going to waffle for 4 more seconds, and then I'll probably go off and have to do some writing. But if someone jumps on, if they have any opinions on this concept of empathy and sympathy, and let me see if I can get this on the empathy and sympathy. Feel free to jump in. Just click. The link's there. And remember, you guys make the show. Why do you make the show? Because it's about you. If you're a black person, you have an opinion, and you some way along the line are seeking betterment, this show is for us, right? Us coming together and creating the institutions and the ideas that's going to generally make a difference in black people's lives. Because if we don't do it, there's a very high chance that it won't be done. So this is for you. So if anyone wishes to jump in and talk about empathy, sympathy, anything they've observed, or if you've got any questions, you're more than welcome to type it in. And we're going to, we have Brother Kel here. So I'm just going to add, where's my mouse working? It's not, there we go. So we add, hola. Hi, brother, can you hear me? I hope you can. I'm going to turn my mic up, just turn my headphones so I can hear you. But yeah, so welcome, Brother Kel. Whenever you discover your on button for the mic, let me know. Your mic is not mute, so you can speak whenever you wish. And anyone else wish to join in, Brother Kel has been in the week before and the week before that. So hopefully, brother, coming regular. Hi, brother, welcome. Is that you, Kel, Brother Kel?
How you doing, brother Raven? Yeah, I've just logged in, man. Just trying to adjust.
Oh, take your time. Take your time. Take your time. We're just at the moment we're talking about the concept of empathy and sympathy, and why so many black people they're motivated to try to make non-black people feel their pain and to maybe jump on in the solution. And it's just an interesting observation, and it's the topic of today's talk. That's what it is. Right. So is this something? Have you? So let me ask you some questions. Have you ever been around black people and you've noticed that many or any tend to look out for solution, meaning outside of the community for solution?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's something, unfortunately, that we all do.
Right.
What I have noticed, when you study, us, in the beginning, like the ancient times, is that we've always had this kind of this humanity with us.
Mm.
How we, the justice and equality, and making sure everyone's okay. This is something which the creator instilled in us from the beginning.
Mm.
And we've always had that. Even when we, when you look at the wars and between the, the non-Africans, whether it be the Europeans, the Middle Easterns and the Asians, is that
Mm,
we've always had that type of humanity
mm,
and still practice the code of conduct at the same time.
mm.
So that thing, what you're referring to, the empathy, that's something that will not go with us. The only difference now is, Brother Raven, is that because of our great fall,
Mm,
what's happened is that the code of conduct has been taken away,
right.
and that empathy's still been there.
Mm,
So because that's been taken away, as we go back to the last show when you was talking about the template,
mm,
is that the code of conduct, when I look into Garvey's and should I say, and that it's an instruction manual to help you to navigate yourself through other people's unfair code of conduct.
right.
So because that's been taken away now, we're just left with the empathy. So we'll fall into many problems because we don't have our instilled code of conduct how we had in ancient times.
Right. So it's like you're being emotionally led, and there was ways of living that defended you from being too kind, or too naive, you should say. And now that's being removed. You find yourself making these mistakes. So quick, then we're going to read some of the questions. From Sister Betty. It's the mixed race black folk that do that because of their family situation. So I assume what Sister Betty is saying is there are some black people who might be married into a different culture, or they might adopt different children, or they have kids, mixed kids and this kind of stuff, or so-called mixed kids and stuff, and and I guess maybe what sister is saying is that might be a contributing factor of why certain people are always looking to include others in the solution. Now I'm very clear when I'm out in what I'm saying. Like there's certain things you do in life that is inclusive, and certain things you don't. Whether you have a non-black partner, non-black children, non-black whatever, if the goal is to teach a community how to work within themselves to find a solution because it's something that hasn't really happened for certain reasons, whatever, then that means that in those processes where you're doing that, it isn't necessary to call any non-black person because that actually is working against black people and it's making you be more inadequate and actually trying to find developing skills. So skills of like how to work with other people, how to communicate, how to put down, your distrust for certain people, what it might be. This is something that we're trying to change. Now, mixed race folk like Bob Marley talk one love because he's part white. Okay, they need non-black folk to be created and survive. Right. So, as you know, Sister Betty always goes shopping, and she's mentioning that there are some people who, because she's equating it, because some people have mixed families, maybe that might be that's something that she can explore. Everyone's always free to their opinions here. What I try to do personally, when I'm speaking, is there's many situations where people find themselves, and I don't know how people get there, how they think, but it is put down a template that works. And right now, if we are finding that people are dropping the ball and not motivated to do certain things, we need to address it. Um, you know, so that's where we're at here. But if I have to hear Bob Marley "One Love" motto from white folk one more time, I will scream. Right, and that brings to another thing where black people, the things they say are then used by non-black people as a reason to try to allow non-black people into black circles to have whatever they want to have there. And I think a lot of Martin Luther King things they use, a lot of his stuff. Sister Bay's mentioned Bob Marley of One Love, and in some cases these quotes and ideas are probably used out of context. And the area of interest I'm at, and I would like to speak to black people this way, is what is the motivation behind when black people come together for you to look outside for solutions? That's an interesting thing because I don't see that being represented in other community groups. Is this something? Have you noticed that in other communities? Have you seen other communities look for black people for their solutions? Have you ever seen that, Brother Cal?
Um, I've seen it directly and indirectly, and there's a
Go ahead.
reason why
Go
it's
ahead.
directly and indirectly. Um, the thing is, Brother Raven, when you research all the Pan-Africanists from the past and stuff, right, they seem to agree upon that the best races imitate African culture.
Mm.
Um, and the reason why that is one, because we are the first and
Hmm.
we've civilized everywhere. So the problem is that how do you stop yourself from being under the wing of those who came before you without humiliating yourself?
Mm.
And this is where, for example, when it comes to the non-Africans, that everything they do, and as you know yourself very well, it's a code of conduct.
Yes.
So whether it be humiliating oneself to, for example, rearranging what the religious or the Abrahamic prophets look like, or whether it be copying the R&B songs, or whether it be, taking the maths, the science, the astrology and reinventing it, whether it be humiliating to know that they're doing that or not, they understand as long as we practice a code of conduct, it's not that humiliating.
Mm.
And we don't seem to understand that because it baffles us because our nature is completely different. The fact that somebody will try to, you know, evase what you invented and tell you in your face that you never did it, that's very shocking to African people
Yeah.
because the equality and justice which is instilled into us, that we would never do that.
Mm.
But what we don't understand is that they're practicing a code of conduct to differentialize everything that you do. So
Mm.
that's why, for example, when it comes to the Bob Marley quotes or when it comes to these things, is that they are practicing, as you know, a political method of differentializing everything what the African does. So he cannot enhance it himself and succeed with it,
Mm.
and that's the reality of it's their code of conduct.
Mm. Interesting point there, brother. Interesting point. Yeah, it is interesting, and I haven't actually directly invited anyone on the show who might have strong opinions against like black Betterment, who are black, of course. But I might actually do that. I'm gonna be maybe hosting some other shows or some other channels, and then obviously if I mention it, then you might get a certain type of people who's gonna come to this show. But maybe that might be interesting for us to hear the opinions of people who don't necessarily think like us in the sense of like the. I mean, I've always used the term kumbayarist, and
Mhm.
I know, and it's funny. I was into a show the other day, and the lady mentioned it, like we eventually want to have that kumbayarist, but that seemed to be the that everyone in holding hands together. And what I'm saying is that is the perfect thing for a world that is perfect. Like everyone's great, everyone holds hands, and everyone sings. But unfortunately, when you're in the position black people are in, that shouldn't be your
Mhm.
priority. Your priority should be survival. And what I've
Mhm.
noticed is many black people have culturalized struggling. They've culturalized struggling to the point where
Mhm.
when you hear words like hustling, the word hustling
Mhm.
is the glorification of not achieving. All right.
Mhm.
So when you have these kind of concepts and you have certain kind of roles and responsibilities that's based around these kind of concepts, then what you're saying is, you expect to be in this kind of continuous spiral until you can't do anymore. And this is the kind of thinking that I'm trying to reverse with the community's help.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, and it's like, and even when you talk about things like sisters putting in the comments now, like Rainbow Coalition, this kind of stuff,
Mhm.
I wouldn't mind these concepts if it meant that every people group has their power representatives and they work in aid of their people. But what it tends to mean is that people integrate into a concept or so-called integrate and they have no power or any kind of decision making. They can't really emphasize any kind of change and they are
Mhm.
subjected to other people dictating how cultures should manifest. When someone has
Mhm.
a new cultural freedom that has to then be pushed on to black people. We have to accept this new way of of existing that might contradict certain things that's in our best interest. Who knows? So this is this is uh this is why I think a lifestyle of everyone being on call, like you say, brother, and everyone coming together to think, okay, what is it that we need to do collectively that's in our collective best interest? And I can't say that when you talk
mm,
to many black people, there's many of them who I come across who actually are thinking of the concept of collective betterment, of like how to change the narrative or change things to try to up and guarantee that black
mm,
people have a tangible betterment solution. That's just
mm.
me saying what I'm saying.
Yeah. Um, you see what it is as well, Brother Raven, as I said to you, the work what you do, I truly believe it's a branch of Pan-Africanism. And
Mm,
the problem is that when it comes to us as a people, we because the code has been taken away from us, there's been loads of Pan-Africanists from the past and have laid down a blueprint for us. For
mm,
example, the Honorable Marcus Garvey, right?
right.
He's laid down a curriculum, a manuscript that will help you to deal with politics, that will
Mm,
help you to deal with the non-Africans,
mm,
where you can keep your religion, but at the same time it will help you. So if that's been implemented before us,
mhm,
and you've got many others who branch off that as well, then the question is that do we really want to um, get rid of the system of white supremacy, or do we really just want to be comfortable and helping them in it, and at the
mm,
same time being able to maneuver around in the world? And we've got to ask ourselves that question, brother, man, because I mean, being oppressed every day and going outside and whether you're in your workplace or not, and seeing the code of non-Africans practicing it unfairly,
mm,
it has to click in your mind to say, well, this is not right, man. You know, enough's
right.
enough. But I don't think that we're on that verge yet, Brother Raven, in regards to, enough's enough. I think that a lot of us still want to be hammered down.
Well, you say that, and I could agree in certain aspects, but I think the point I made earlier about cultural, when you culturalize pain, the idea of
Mm,
culturalizing pain and seeing it day to day, and lack of achievement, uh, you're already defeated in your mind, right? Isn't like it's like you wouldn't wake up and fight the sun because you know that the
mhm,
sun comes up goes down every day. I think when you culturalize ideas and you see it as the norm, you're kind of doing that.
mhm,
You're accepting that this is how it is. So then what you do is in that kind of in that kind of environment, you then find goods and
mm,
bad. So it comes down to like young children wanting to be, say, strippers or wanting to be drug dealers, right? That like
mhm,
these kind of careers were pushed upon people who felt at the time they had no other option and they needed money, right?
mhm,
What happened is at a certain point, people wanted to be them. You see,
mhm,
they want to be them. So it isn't like, oh, I'm going through a hard time. This might be an easy way out, even though it's not in my best interest, whatever, or at least community best interest. But now you find that a lot of these things they do because they're looking forward to it. They're turning these ideas into a career, at least in
mhm,
them. And that's why I look at when you kind of are defeated, where you do that. You
mhm,
take a bad situation, you split it
mhm,
in two, and then you have the good side of the bad situation and the bad side
mhm,
of the situation, right?
mhm.
Question: Why, Raven? Why do Jamaican behavior like white British? That's from LeBron James Jr. I'm not too sure what you mean by that. Why do Jamaican behavior like white British? I mean, I can try to interpret what you mean by that. There are there just a scenario that might be connected. Uh, on TV back in the old days, I don't know if it's still the same now. You couldn't get on to TV on Jamaica, especially doing the news stuff, if you didn't sound like you were the Queen.
Mhm,
That was the thing. So and naturally you got two conflicting cultures. You had one culture that was pro kind of like trying to be Queen's English and looking like the Queen and do things like the King, Queen, that kind of stuff. And then you got like the Back to Africa movement, like the Rastafarians and these kind of people who were like,
Mhm.
they asked them, "Who is your king?" And they said, "Well,
Mhm.
it can't be the legacy of slavery. So we have to then look towards, say, Haile Selassie and this kind of dynasty
Mhm.
because they're from the land of Africa and they are not contributing to the transatlantic slave trade and these kinds of things." Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, but if any questions, by all means, family, pull it in the group and I'll try to answer it. And the links in there, so by all means, you can come in and speak direct if you like, as long as your machine or phone, whatever it is, has a microphone, you can talk and we can test it out. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah. I assume that's what you meant by LeBron James Jr., if that's your very cool name, of why some Jamaicans may actually behave like a white British person. If you're talking about in the diaspora, like now, I have seen one other thing that a show I do want to tackle, and it's the
Mhm.
confidence in black people to say certain things. So it might be the confidence in a black man or black woman to make a strong statement like, "I don't like black men. I don't like black women. I want to date a non-black person." It's
Mhm.
interesting that's another defeated culture where you
Mhm.
don't recognize that
Mhm.
your phenotype, you are the opposite phenotype of what you're looking for. So you come from a woman or a man or whatever it might be, and
Mhm.
you are then openly saying that you are not geared or attracted to people who look like you. And obviously,
Mhm.
once again, there's a psychology and a training from the media and from other codes
Mhm.
and systems and stuff that make sense to you. And I always say that when you look at, say, street culture,
Mhm.
when you look at street culture, what you have is you have people saying things like, if I commit a crime as a gentleman or a gentlewoman, I'm never gonna go and tell the police." And you'll be hard pressed to find a so-called street person go on TV or any kind of place where there's lots of people around and say, "I'm gonna tell on all my friends." Right? They couldn't say that
Mhm.
publicly, even though what they're actually they're loyal to a criminal act, an act that actually people are harmed by and degrades communities. But we look past that and the loyalty of not talking is there, and they have passion and pride, and the eyes is gleaming when they say this. However, black people who might say that might be more than happy to go on TV or anywhere and say, "I don't like black men, I don't like black women." So once again, this kind of priority is compromised. But we have another question. I mean, Jamaican people act like white British, not African white. So I mean, Jamaican people act like white British, not African white. Well, let me break down what I think you're saying. Um, well, you might have to review that question because there might be some errors in the premise. But what I would say is uh, the difference between England and Jamaica, and there is a few differences when it comes to interactions with, say, England, for example, is England took people from Jamaica and they took them to they took people from Nigeria, they took them to Jamaica and other places, right? And
Absolutely.
whilst they took people to Jamaica, they completely robbed them of their culture. They robbed them of all their religions, their understandings that they had from Nigeria or all the other places they took, right? And they made them have like one kind of way of thinking, which is wherever the religion was of the enslavers, wherever the king was or the queen of the enslavers, and obviously subservience. And as time went by and you broke that down, and you only presented one kind of culture, then you have black people in the Jamaica compete for that one kind of culture. So subservience and anti-African and this kind of stuff became the norm, right? And then you saw a dynamic. You saw everyone who was of European descent had wealth, and yet all the people of African descent didn't have any wealth. So naturally, once you're broken down, you're looking for betterment. So you're looking at these people for stuff. So this is one reason why that maybe what you're thinking of, the black British, the white British behavioral patterns might be more prevalent. Africa is slightly different. Africa, was people were taken from there. You still see the influence of Europeans and stuff in Africa. You must understand that natural influences are fine, right? So, for example, you might have Japan, you have they might make a certain kind of cartoon or something like that, and then people like it and they're influenced by that cartoon, that style, right? You might have black people that make a music and people like the music and they're influenced by that. This is the part of the culture and the part of ideas that is okay. But the problem you have is where you take a people and you force them to be something else at fear and threat of death. This is where we are saying it's okay to reject that kind of behavior, because if something was good, you don't have to force it at knife point. So hopefully that explains your to you, LeBron, about why some Jamaicans and many Jamaicans might be more to your viewing closer to white British people than Africans because of that breaking down. And this was all deliberate. Like,
Mm,
one thing that just to make it even more easier for you to understand, most, if not all, Jamaicans will have the name or second name of a British person, right, or Scottish or whatever it might be, and that's because it was given to them, as in they had no choice but to lose their Nigerian or Mali or Ghana, or whatever it might be name, and
mm,
and adopt that one. Sister Bay's joined it. Hi, welcome, Sister Bay. We've added to the group, and I hope I've answered your question, LeBron. But you can always have more. Um, and yes, Sister Betty's always want to pick up many challenges of what people follow. And she has brought up that there is some challenges in Haile Selassie, and Eritrea and these kind of stuff. And what I would say to black people is there is no perfection in any one person, any one idea. Like, you tend to find that as long as there's a human being, they're always going to have some connection to some kind of challenge in it. And one thing that I pushed within the 4D values, which I shall scroll over here, which is fantastic, if we can find it, is discernment. Like, how do you practice discernment? Because as black people, we're going to come together. Now, one black person is going to be maybe religious and read some kind of book. One guy is going to be, philosophy and has like a leader. One person is going to have like, some freedom kind of natural thing, whatever it be. And then within that, there's always going to be one or two people who have things that could be seen as negative, things could be positive. So the question mark is, how do we work together when we are looking forward? We are looking for constructive black stuff to point towards. How do that and try to minimize the offense we might cause to other black people? And hopefully we can work that out on shows like this. Welcome, Sister Ben. I don't know if your microphone's working, but
Hi. Hi.
hi. How's it going?
It's all right. I didn't interrupt you. Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on your topic of what's it? Just talking about like the Bob Marley thing, and what I've noticed is a considerable amount of white people like to use Bob Marley as a way to shut black people up. If
Right.
black people starts complaining about racism, then they'll go, "Oh, it's just one love. We're all just family." These white hippies that tend to hang around at carnival time. These type of white people that never leave black people alone. I'm like, I was a slave master. All this stuff. I don't, those type of people, and I
Yeah.
find it gets quite annoying because
I hear that.
Bob Marley does not represent Rastafarism, for one. Because what I knew of Rastafarism, it was about back to Africa. It wasn't about condoning relationships with white people to the point where you're marrying them and having children with them.
Is that right? Is that something that Bob Marley said himself, or is that I don't know if he necessarily, because I have seen a few interviews of him where he seemed to be pretty pro-African and pretty pro-black in his explanations of his philosophies that he followed. Maybe he fell short.
He had children with
Was
that Shakespeare, that white Jamaican lady.
Was she white or was she of mixed heritage? That lady, am I wrong?
Right. She looks white. Let's be honest. She's got a white father, and
Right.
I would question the amount of black ancestry she has.
Very true. Okay. Well, and this is maybe something we could go down this road on this topic. It is an interesting thing, and this is why we have to tread very carefully, because we're recognizing that as a collective people. So let's just start from a certain sector of life, right? Let's just go to, say, Africa. Let's talk about black Africans, right? So we have black Africans in Africa doing what they're doing great stuff. And then you have what we call the transatlantic slave trade, where people are taken and put to the Caribbean. Now, in that process, we understand that under that system, there is rape, there is black people wanting to procreate with the enslaver, and then you have freedom fighters, and then you have all that going on, and then you have the byproduct of that, and then you have people in the new land, and you have this concept, and then towards the more closer time, you have the situation where black people are choosing to marry non-black people for whatever reason they find themselves. It's very difficult to try to galvanize a people when when you have all these things going on. But one thing that people we set down is, look, if someone has identifiable African ancestry, we're going to use the word African ancestry right now, and you have an African parent, and you're from there, well, then you as an individual will not be charged with the challenges that your parents made, and you can, in your freedom, can choose to try to make a betterment for the collective group, the identifiable African heritage people, right, or African people. That's my understanding of when you meet someone and the choices they can't control before them. So if that's the case, if a person, from my understanding, has African ancestry, whether they are their family, their dad is it, or they half it, or whether they want to see it, then them choosing to be with another person or similar, I wouldn't necessarily question. I would question the psychology. Now, when we say question the psychology, is unfortunately, if we have a person who hates black so much that, and this does go on, you hate black so much that you're trying to get with the person furthest away from black, and you're in a scenario where you're not allowed to be with, say, the enslaver people, like the Europeans, whatever. So then you vouch for the closest thing in your mind, which is a person born from the rape of the enslaver, a person who has identifiable non-black phenotypes or history or whatever. This is a problem. And then what I'm seeing as well is, if you spend a long time mistreating the traditional Aboriginal African people and the phenotype, then even from that angle, when you're trying to unite, that the legacy of that will always come forward. So whoever you choose a partner, they're wondering, do you think they're ugly, or are you picking someone else because they're furthest away from this kind of look? So this is the challenge that the European, or the European slaver has kind of forced upon black people. And I'm asking, like, how do you find a solution for that when you're trying to galvanize and unite black people to work together? Like, what codes do you push in to try to get past that? And that's quite a deep question. And I try to write about this. And what I have done is I've made documents of how black people should interact and how we should view. And I would say, go ahead. Dave.
Cynthia, this is it's Cindy Shakespeare. She looks phenotypically like a white woman. There's nobody in their right mind that she was anything but a white woman, yeah? But this is the thing that annoys me about this Bob Marley guy, yeah? To claim that he's like pro-black when you see how he treated his black wife, but all the illegitimate children that he had, and told her to look after him and look after Pekin that I had with God knows how many different women, yeah? He's a womanizer. For black people to big up a man that mistreated his black wife. Yeah. Then even the mistresses, how many children did he have with different women? Which type of stable background can you bring? This is not a black man. If they want to call him black, not to call him mixed, I would even big up. Then the black wife accuses him of being a rapist too. So for me, I don't think people take the time to look at what Bob Marley did and what his wife says of him, because I judge a man by what the women around you say of you.
There's a he's gonna say anything, brother Raven? Is he gonna pop in?
Oh no, you go ahead, brother. You have the floor.
There's an interesting book that I have, and it's called the author's Francis Fanon, and it's called White Mask, Black Face. Don't know if anyone's read that before. And Francis Fanon, he's from the Caribbean, but he spent majority of his years in France, and he's a great author, and he breaks down the psychology of the why black men and black women tend to go out their race. And in the book, it mentions that whenever the black man or the black woman looks himself in the mirror, they see the deficiency, and naturally they look at their counterpart, whether it be the black man or the black woman, and they see for example, the European as a privilege to hide that deficiency, what they believe to have, in order to get by in life. And it's very interesting because although he's a brilliant author, he was also married to a European as well.
Very.
When you analyze it, is that it returns back again to the code of conduct. The Africans have always interbreeded with other nations, right? But when they did do it, they still had the code of conduct. You see, when you look at the European, the Asian, and the Middle Eastern, they practice an unfair code of conduct. But have you noticed, even when they interbreed with Africans, they still are able to keep their code of conduct amongst themselves. So I don't agree that we should be mixing, but at the same time, because we've lost our code of conduct, we need a blueprint. And the Honorable Marcus Garvey, he's left a blueprint down that the black man has no business going into non-black soil. And for those who disagree with that, I mean, when you look at the religion of the Hebrew Israelites, there's a quote in their book that mentions the Creator specifically told the Israelites, do not go out your race. Now, why did he say that? Because of an experience what they went through, which is going to lead for them to be more deluded. So although Sister Betty, it's, if Bob Marley was doing that, because the way I know Bob Marley to be, and that he was definitely influenced by the Honorable Marcus Garvey. In fact, in all of his tunes, as well as his messages, he was always revolutionary all the time. But at the same time, there's things where we focus on different aspects. Me personally, my brother, and that, if he was doing that, it's wrong. However, I like to focus on the revolution side. Is what he did is going to help the race? Well, what he did emotionally, I'm not really into the popularity, because I know that when you start analyzing or idolizing a person's character, or looking at their character instead of their work for the black people and that, you tend to get sidetracked. So what I notice is that if he was doing that, Bob Marley, which I have no idea, then obviously that it's very wrong. But I think we should concentrate more on the messages, what he did. It was definitely influenced by the Honorable Marcus Garvey, and we salute the Rastafarians because they were able to put Pan-Africanists, they promoted it, and we respect all the Rastafarians for that, the Bingi.
Yeah, and let me jump in. So I think Sister, what the value that Sister Betty brings in most conversations I've seen her in is she does hold people to task, and she does try to speak for those who might not have a voice, which is always an honorable thing. And we have to acknowledge that any pain that's been caused, we want to learn from it and make sure it doesn't repeat. But what Brother Kyle is saying is another form of discernment, where recognizing that most people in certain circumstances are broken, including us. We have broken parts of us, and we have fixed parts of us. And sometimes what we want to do is we want to highlight a person's fixed element, the thing that that we can latch onto to make us all better. And we want to only speak about the negative stuff in order to fix it and correct it. But one thing I would say, and obviously this is not universal, what I would say from every person is we have to be very careful. I'm pushing forward that if we undermine the good someone does because of the bad they do, you see, and sometimes that's where the discernment and challenge comes in, because you have people who do wonderful things, but also they do some things that are not too great. So this is the community lesson we're trying to learn today, how we can work on that. So in regards to Bob Marley, I do appreciate anything he's done to spread a message and to help people out and all the rest of it. But if he had done anything that wasn't of a benefit to his wife and stuff, then this is something we have to learn from and definitely not repeat. And we have to have philosophies and code of conducts to make sure that all women are protected in all engagement with everyone, But I would have to hear her complaints to actually get to go more in depth about these scenarios, because I haven't actually heard her complaints. To be fair, I've only ever heard good things. So I haven't yet seen those YouTube videos. But when you present them, Sister Bay, we can unwrap them and we can go with her and try to find solutions to make sure people like her never find themselves in those situations again, if possible.
I think the thing, it's not just YouTube videos, it's in her book.
All right, got you.
Yeah, when she talks about it. But what I've noticed with certain brothers is the tendency to big up black men or mixed race men, whatever, who do something in terms of black betterment, but
Right.
they don't look at what they did to the women in their life, and
Very
then try and tell us that they did something called black betterment. But does that not include black women?
It should do. You're right.
Thing with Malcolm X, when you look at what he did in his earlier life, yeah, and then people seem to think that the sins of the past can be forgiven for what he did later on.
Right.
And another thing, the thing that bothers me about this Bob Marley is this business of having children out of wedlock.
Right.
Plenty of different women. Like
Right.
this is an honourable thing to do.
I don't know. Well, let's unpack, because remember, you say very, very important points, and let's try to unpack them. So, and this is something that we're gonna have to like really title these points in future shows and try to really unpack them better. But just on the fly now, you mentioned Malcolm X. Now, I'm aware about people like Malcolm X, and there are many other Malcolm X-esque people in this world. Is for some situation they find themselves committing crime after crime, and they definitely display a supreme self-hatred for themselves and the community. And somewhere along the line, they find solace or redemption in a new way, when they realize that this way surpasses that way. So the crimes that Brother Malcolm X did, they were crimes, and we can never big them up. However, he did try to reform himself. Now, upon reforming himself, I haven't heard any similar complaints. Now, the sins you do in your past, I think that, just by being good isn't actually good enough. You have to correct those sins if you know what they are. So if I robbed your car when I was younger, you need that car back. I don't just say sorry and then you have no car. Yeah. So I don't know what he did or the crimes to the extent if he's done that. But what I can certainly say is, from my observation of him and the reports that people talk about him, he was quite consistent when it came to his betterment and being quite respectful all around. After he went from being Red Spencer, Red something, to Malcolm X. I can't remember his street name at the time what it was.
But what about what his wife? Do you know what his wife said of him?
I'll go ahead.
When she talks about leaving Malcolm several different times. I think this is the issue where brothers focus on him as a black man because you're a black man, but women focus on what he did to women.
Good point.
And many of these black men that they're bigging up had very problematic relationships with black women or the women in their life. And I'm like, well, I don't need a black man as a role model because I'm a black woman. So obviously I'm going to lean more towards black women because that's what I am. Do you know what I mean? But it's sad to see the way people don't even look. Because I feel like sometimes people either don't read what the wives have said, or just or black women. Like Malcolm X, one of the things in what did he say? Black women are the most disrespected people in America. But it's the same thing in the whole so-called black empowerment movement. The black needs are just put at the back burner. You're just told to support a man, and then you find out he wasn't even treating black women right. Even the integrationist, Martin Luther King, was he not having affairs all over the place? They said he even had affairs with white women.
What I was aware of that situation, and you could probably update me more. I was aware that the FBI tried to create a situation where they paid Swedish, I believe, models, or who it might be, to sleep with him, so they can record it and then blackmail him. And Sister Barry, what you're doing is golden. It's very important. And you being a woman, you are going to look at things from that angle. The angle some of us come from, which might not be the correct angle, but it's an angle we do come from, is and this works for both men and women when we observe them, is we kind of allow people to have a private life as long as it doesn't spill out in the streets, right? But if it does spill out in the streets, we have to correct it. But the ins and outs of a man and woman's affairs and the ups and downs, I tend to ignore unless like the woman is screaming like, "I need help. This is wrong," or "I can't live this way. What's going on?" That's when it'll be my job as a community worker to step in. Um, but I also have to always remember that the self-esteem and behavioral patterns of black people are damaged even in the process of betterment. So I would say that the brother, and much respect to Martin Luther King, but I would say that him being alive at that point, at that era, regardless of wanting to change, I wouldn't be surprised if he had himself, as many others around him, would have a lot of low self-esteem issues, right? And also might have even felt privileged to be around European women. You see, as in like even despite what he was preaching, I think there was even some evidence or proof to suggest that he was actually his earliest girlfriend was of European descent, and her father, being on code, told him, "No, you can't marry her." Um, and that was the first person he wanted to marry, and maybe that's why he actually wanted to integrate. This is something that someone else will have to bring forward and update. So that's what I'm saying. But if you are bringing problems, and these problems happen today, then as a community, especially amongst men, we have to have a code and template that definitely guarantees women's betterment, so that how they interact with men and vice versa is of a nature where people cannot be mistreated. There isn't any room for it. There's a defense clause for all these problems, and I'm more than happy to work on that particular template if needed. But you are right, as in on the things you're saying.
Yeah, because it's like for me, it's like Elijah Muhammad, what's his name, the Nation of Islam guy.
That's
They
right.
big him up. Malcolm bigs him up. What the hell was happening? So many different women and teenage girls, all this type of nonsense.
Right. So let's unpack that again. So this is definitely an issue that's a member of the Nation of Islam probably tell better than myself. But what I'm aware is the head of the Nation of Islam did have kids with different women, and at the time, Malcolm X was not best pleased with this. From his understanding of what was going on, and then at that point he might have bigged up the work he'd done and then the philosophies he pushed forward, but he wasn't in agreement with having this many children and stuff. So at that point he did make a distinction at that point in his actual journey. And you are talking about a person who was a pimp, a drug dealer, and all the rest of it, went to jail, discovered a member of the Nation of Islam, and discovered the Elijah Muhammad's philosophies, adapted them, cleaned up his life, and then as time went by, he had some disagreements with how people should operate under the Nation of Islam, and then you saw them separate, and then unfortunately he died not too long after. But the hard thing that black people, and it's really important to understand this, and I have to be very, very, very candid about it, and it's how we utilize discernment, because Bruce Lee was a martial art, probably one of the most popular martial artists of modern time. And what made him famous is many things, but one thing, he made his own kind of martial art skill. And what that martial art skill was is looking at yourself as a person, your height, your stature, and then going around looking at other martial arts that you could utilize to improve your fighting technique to defend yourself. Now, he was saying you take certain things and you disregard certain things. And I think that concept is a very interesting concept that maybe black people can utilize when it comes to life. Like, you need to walk up to people. I'm recommending you walk up to a person who might be a very healthy eater. He might sing beautiful music, and he might say wonderful things to trees. All right, and you can say, yeah, those three things are great. However, he might never spend any time with his kids. So that's what you don't take. You don't take that. You then look at the homeless man who isn't healthy, who isn't singing great songs, but he actually spends all the time with his kids. So from the homeless man who you might look down upon, you take something of value, and from the man who everyone's giving praise, you take the high praise that he gives, but you ignore the terrible stuff. When I say ignore, I mean ignore from the concept of extracting. But as a community, we try to work to make sure he is aware that that isn't correct behavior, and we want to work with him in bettering it. Does that make sense, Sister Bay?
I'd have to think about it. I need to
Of
think more.
course, of course, of course. The reason I'm saying this, Sister Bay, is because what we want to do as a community is make sure that when we identify challenges and people who act in a way that isn't beneficial to themselves or the community, that we allow a situation where they can redeem themselves.
They can redeem themselves, but the fact of the matter is there are some people that are not into this type of nonsense and destructive behaviour. I think brothers need to be held to a higher standard. You know, I'm getting kind of fed up of these ex-convicts being put up as heroes just because they changed. And then all these children that people are having out of wedlock, and with all plenty of different women, 101 different baby mothers. Do you know what I mean? And I just think black people, I know, especially a lot of black men, I've noticed the black men they hold up, they're either ex-convicts or there's always some type of fuckery they've been up to. And the relationship with women seems to be a huge problem. I'm like, can just get me a clean brother.
Right, clean brother. Well, what you're saying, we always try to say that no matter your background, you always have a chance to improve, and but at the same token, when it comes to the value nature, we can't judge a person if we don't walk a mile in their shoes. But what we can say is, if they're two twin brothers, they both live in the same house, they both live in the same environment, yet one decides to go and do behaviors that is not beneficial, while the other one goes and does things that is beneficial, then we have to then prop up the one who makes the beneficial decisions, and maybe at a later time the other one then changes their direction and they become better, and we give them a chance to redeem themselves and better, and we don't judge them for their past negatively, but we are aware when it comes to character that both of you had the same upbringing, yet you went one way and your brother went the other way. So from that standpoint, he will always have that that high credit over you, and that means that you as an individual will have to work harder because he never fell for that trap that you fell for. But we don't want to disparage people from pursuing betterment or for trying to turn their life around.
But one of the things that I find a little bit worrying is a considerable amount of people I've come across in the Pan-African community, and they talk about Africa and say, what the Africans did, the ancestors. If you look like a place like Nigeria, there's a paper by Dr. Eno, an Ibibio woman from my ethnic group. She talks about sexuality in Igbo and Ibibio culture. She says one of the crimes that would have got you sold into slavery was having children out of wedlock. A man going from one woman's bed to another woman's bed and not marrying her and not looking after the children. But nowadays, people are proud to say, oh, we got children out of wedlock with this baby mother and that baby mother, etc., etc. And they don't castate the man for not looking after his pikin. But then these very same people will talk about what the ancestors did. But the ancestors would have sold you into slavery for what you did, because that was a great crime. There was more of a respect for women. If you did not look after your children, you could disrupt the whole society. There were wars created over that. Men dishonoring somebody's daughter. But here, men have it easy because they don't look after the children. There's very little consequences for a man that doesn't look after his children. But in other places in the world, all hell's going to break loose. You can find a war just at your door in Africa if you didn't look after your children and you're found to be jumping from one woman's bed to another woman's bed. This is a problem, that we don't look at sexuality and the responsibilities of manhood and womanhood and the rites of passage, because quite often they don't look at that side of Africa. But the more you look into it, you will see that someone like Bob Marley, he would have been sold into slavery for what he did, because he went to great children out of wedlock with lots of different women.
Right.
and mistreated his wife.
Was there any reports that his children were displeased with his fathering? Was there any reports of that?
I've not looked at that. I just looked at what the wife said and all
Okay.
the
Well,
mistresses. Yeah.
and that's the dimension we have to look at. We have to look at how a man treats his wife, how a man treats his children, and also we have to understand and be merciful that some people they practice a different kind of family. Some men have more than one wife, some don't. And regardless of what lifestyle you choose or you're in, I say that everyone should be on board. And two, if you take one wife, two wives, three wives, or one girlfriend, or wherever it is you're living in the community you're from, your responsibility is to make sure that you provide and care for all those and you don't mistreat. Now, if any mistreat is going on, then that is what has to be corrected. So is like the problem with this pain kind of domino effect is you have broken men and you're trying to fix broken men, but at the same time, you also have broken women. So you might try to give a solution to the broken women, like, you should never pick a man like this, but then they might not. So then it becomes more challenging because while you're trying to fix the men, part of the fixing of men, from what I see, is a kind of punishment in the sense of by looking and behaving this kind of way, you won't have any women, because as women, there's a standard. And in order for you to be with women, you have to train and get yourself to the standard. That's why teaching women how to look for men and vice versa is very important. Like sometimes people have to be left in isolation. There has to be quality control. I don't know if this resonates with anyone in the audience or anything like that, where, you have to create standards of, in order for you to be with this man or this woman, they have to be able to do these things and uphold these kind of principles. So there's no shock. It's like, sometimes when you get certain situations with men and women, and you go, well, what did he do or she do beforehand? And there's nothing. I'm like, whoa, the fact that they hadn't done anything before, how did it get to the point where you were having children with them? Like, how did it even get to the point where you were intimate with them when they haven't displayed these qualities? And this is something that, as a community, we might be able to review. Like, what should a man and woman do before they even get alone with each other in any capacity? Is that anything that makes any sense to you, Sister Bay, at all, or not really?
Yeah, of course. But like you said, there are situations when the children are already there. What do you do when the children are already there? And the fact that there doesn't, so many of these men, because it's very rare to hear a woman abandon their child. It's mainly men that are abandoning the children and refusing to take care. It's not easy for a woman to abandon a child that you just carried for 9 months, because there's a lot more castation on women that abandon their children than men. Because society is just sexist. That's just how it is, especially in European society. I've noticed that. Except in America, where in America, if you don't pay child support, you get thrown in prison. But in England, you can just, child support agents say, you said, sometimes the child support ends, you don't collect anything. Men have a lot. The men who don't look after their children have it a lot easier here than they do in America. And that goes for the black community too. I just felt of this baby and mother culture, and just so irresponsible. Like, this idea, and then these type of dynamics that I'm seeing and hearing. Oh, a woman's had a child with you, she doesn't want you anymore, but you seem to think that you can come back and forth to have sex with her, and you won't pay child support if she doesn't. These are the type of things that the reason why social welfare was put into this country, because there were men playing these type of games. And that's a proper problem in Nigeria, where men are refusing to pay for their children, especially if they're girls, if they can't have sex with a woman anymore. And
So,
where is the solution for that?
Right. Well, let me say this. Sometimes one characteristic is connected to another characteristic, right? And I'm always saying that for me, certain things are clear as day, and it's because I understand the patterns of how to see certain things. But if a man will not pay for his own child because he can't be intimate with the child's mother after they've separated for whatever reason, this might be a knock-on effect of another behavioral pattern where he's shown a certain kind of selfishness that shows this is how he is. And what I'm saying is these kind of templates and these kinds of things that you're noticing could be how you pick a woman. So sometimes sometimes people might say that I'm being very harsh, right? But let me be harsh so you can learn from the harsh and see the harshness as hyperbole, right? For me, if a woman smokes, that really says that she has a certain concept of her health. Not that I'm judging, but I'm saying if health is an issue for me and I want someone who's healthy and all the rest of it, already off the bat, just by meeting her with a cigarette in her hand, it tells me that health isn't her direct priority. So before I even get down to what is she eating, or does she like jogging, or what kind of water she wants to buy for the house, I know that she smokes, and I'm aware that smoking kills people. So when it comes to picking a woman who's going to have a child who smokes, these are the things that okay, well that's one kind of tick she hasn't got. Let me check another tick, and it sounds harsh at a certain point, but that's kind of how I discern over a person to have children with, like and maybe a similar process could be implemented in the community when picking out a husband. And I always, and this is something I tell to all women, and if you hear this, women, I want you to tell this to other women and every woman you come across. And I tell it to every woman I see, when you're meeting a man and you're in a dating process, the most important question you can ask, I would say, is how does my life change after knowing you? You see, the man should have a collection of principles and ways of living that empowers and brings value to the woman he wants to date. If he hasn't discovered what that is, then he might not necessarily be for you at that time. So remember that question when you're on a date. Never be scared to ask the man, "How does my life change after knowing you?" And a man should try to find a way of you know you got to see dating as a competition, like what is it, what is your USP, what's your unique selling point that's going to make a person be with you and not someone else. And by thinking of these things, I'm trying to uphold them, you're creating a character that is going to sway away from abuse. So if you're with a woman and you only want her for something and you're not going to do things for her or the children because you don't get it, well, then that kind of person can't think of such philosophies. And he'll have to be forced to see the value of that. And how he's forced is women will not be with a person who doesn't have those answers.
Yeah, but brother Raven,
Go ahead.
would you say that the problems that we've entered is because there's no code of conduct, and the black men are marrying women who are not Pan Africanized, and the women are marrying black men who are not Pan Africanized. I was listening to what Sister Betty was saying in regards to how men are, etc. And I think sometimes you've got to understand that the system in Africa, they had certain rules, yeah, that will keep certain things from becoming, devastation upon the whole community. The king, the queen, the advisors, they all had different roles, but the people were, helping them, so to say. But now, because we're in a situation that we've been worked on to go against the best interests of ourselves, you have to have patience with each other. For example, Malcolm X, his parents, the Littles, they were Pan Africanists. You understand? And Malcolm X was raised upon that. But the problem is that when the white supremacist was clocking down on Mr. Little, which was his father, he separated, and Malcolm was raised with the white supremacists. Do you understand? So it's not like, for example, he wanted to do these kind of things. What it is because of he was raised with the enemy. Just like, for example, there's a queen called Queen Erewhalo, and she was in the time of the 15th century. And in her time, unfortunately, and I agree with everything what she did, the black men forgot that it was the black woman who helped him to where he was. And the black woman understood that it was the black man who helped her to get to where she was. So she would, hang them upside down by their private parts. Do you understand? Because the black man was oppressing the women in Somalia at that time. However, when it came for the Portuguese to take over Somalia, she would never listen to the Portuguese generals, and she would never listen to the Portuguese women, when they were being oppressed by the Portuguese men, she still stayed on code. And that's what Sister Bay needs to understand, is that we're all going to make mistakes due to the fact of our situation that we're in. You know, we've all been worked on, whether you're in Africa or not, we've all been worked on to go against the best interests of the South. All that fornication, that comes from slavery again, all of it. So because of that there, you have to work with some of our leaders, because as what Carter B. Woodson was mentioning, and he was a black psychiatrist, he was saying that it took him 20 years to get rid of the white supremacy that was in him. And he went to Harvard. It took him 20 years. So you have to work on yourself to get rid of these non-African criteria that's in us. Bob Marley had it. Malcolm X had it. Martin Luther King had it. The Honorable Marcus Garvey had it. We all have it. It's not going to go unless you monitor it. So that's what I'm saying, Sister Bay, you got to understand is that these things, what we're doing, is because we're taught that on the plantation. And some of our leaders, you have to give and take for them, because they're still battling with that psychological damage that's been put onto them.
Can I share a screen? Can you share my screen?
Let me just stop this, and I think I have to allow you. Hold on, share screen. Can you yeah, have a go, add to stream. There you go. There it is.
Yeah. I want to show you a medical doctor, a female, I think her name is Efinwa, in Nigeria, a medical doctor, a woman who was beaten severely by her husband when she was pregnant, and she, continued to beat her 4 weeks after she had a C-section. So this is the woman's face. Yeah. She's got 4 children to her husband. This is the man here. Yeah.
Right.
He is a news presenter, no, a journalist for Channel Television, a Nigerian channel, yeah, that does news. Now, she made a plea talking about, she told her husband to stop spending so much money on the women that he was having, all these affairs he was having. And he was beating her for it. And he said to her, she's accusing him of sitting on her belly while she was pregnant. Yeah. Now, the governor of the state she lives in, Benue State, has come out and reconciled her with her husband. And when you look at the press conference, she looks like she's been coerced into it. Now, the question is, what do you do? And the husband is standing next to her in this press conference, yeah? The very fact that this man had the audacity to even hold his head up high to say that this is what he did to his wife.
Right.
Being pregnant as well. And if you're a man and then you're sitting on your pregnant wife while she's carrying your child, you're trying to kill that child. It won't surprise me if this husband of hers has got all the other women that he's having affairs with pregnant too. Because I don't see why you would try to kill your own child. But there was no justice for this woman. That the governor of the state had the audacity to come and showcase this animal that she calls her husband and show her bloodied face. You still see the scars on her face in the press conference. So when we talk about in this time, there was a time when this type of thing wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But the lack of women's rights and the protection of children in Africa today is disgusting. But I don't see many people trying to have any solutions for what's happening to Black women and their children, the hands of their husbands.
So Sister Bay, this is very unfortunate, and you know, we definitely want to control this kind of stuff from never happening. If you were someone who could actually change rules and change ideas, do you have anything that you would want to implement to try to minimize and stop this kind of behavior? Is anything you've come across, or anything that you reckon might be beneficial, or is it just you're more observing what's happening and looking for other solutions for other people? What would you say to that?
The first thing I would like to look at as a woman, she's not an uneducated woman. She's not from the village where she say she can't make money. Yeah, she's a medical doctor. First, I have to ask, why is her self-esteem so low that she went on to have 4 children with this man? She said that he's been beaten her for 6 years. So first you have to look at the self-esteem issues that she's having in herself as to why she stay with a man like that. Then also the fact that a man can impregnate a woman in Nigeria and then he doesn't have to look after the children. In the law itself, what is the protection that the children will get something when their parents split up? Very often there are women that are still sleeping with these men because they're not going to pay for the children. And then when they go to the police will say, madam, it's domestic issue. Because prior to the time, but prior to the arrival of the white man, the village would sort it out, the family would sort it out.
Exactly. See?
So
exactly.
they don't want the police, they don't want to like get their hands too dirty, because before you know it, it's just not really culturally what Nigerian people do. But nowadays, you're mixing the Western with the traditional ways, and it's not an easy way. But there's got to be some punishment for what he did, because the way I see it is, for what he did to her, and she's still there, 4 children, maybe she's waiting to end up in a body bag.
Yes. So, and that brings us on to
calling for this man to lose his job.
Right.
The women activists and the men that care in Nigeria have been calling for him to lose his job, and that governor should lose his job too.
I agree. I agree. If you're aware of any of these kind of travesty that goes on and people are harmed, and you don't try to impact and make any kind of decision to change, then you have to be called to task. And I think as a community that makes sense. One thing I would like to bring up that is connect to the other things we've been saying. As you mentioned, obviously I don't know the specifics of this particular case, but you mentioned that before the birth of her children, she was attacked by her boyfriend or husband, it might be. And what I'm saying is, the self-esteem and lack of code of conduct and cultural connection and stuff, that is identified there, because one of the rules that I'm pushing forward is, if a man puts his hands on you, you have to leave him. And also that when you actually meet a person and you get to know him, you should get to know his family and friends and sort of rest. And in that, there should be a pact amongst the people to say that if I'm ever in danger for your best friend, you're going to come and protect me from him. Because this is a biological issue, isn't it? Like, a woman isn't expected to be up a man. It just doesn't happen. So the woman must always be protected. So if a man knows that there is a community out there, friends and family, who will come and stop him and harm him if he does harm women and children, then that is something that he has to juggle with his psychology. Because we got to remember is, many men won't attack a woman in front of a police. The reason is they understand they'll be harmed and attacked by the police. So that same kind of concept needs to come from the family and community group, knowing that if you harm a woman in this community, we will have to harm you, because you cannot have a community where women are getting harmed by men. It just doesn't work. So what I would say is that ruling that once your husband or boyfriend or a person you're dating puts their arm on you, it is in your duty to leave that man and tell someone. Like, that's the starting premise of the education for women, because there should be no there's no way you can tell me a man beats up a woman 2 years before their first child, and he's been doing this weekly or monthly or whatever it might be. This is a sign saying that there is no relationship brought upon by pain. It just can't happen. And the education of that concept and the template of that concept, I say, should be taught to all women. But that's just me pushing it out.
Yeah, definitely. And also the lack of they don't have a social safe net in Nigeria like the way they have in Britain. Like, if your husband is beating you here, you can go to the women's refuge, then, they will find accommodation for you and your children. They don't have that in Nigeria. So I think that's definitely something that I would like to implement in Nigeria, so the women feel safe and the children are safe. Because I have family members myself that you ask them, why are you sleeping with this man? Because of the children. Because they know for a fact that, well, many places you have to pay for your kids to be educated. It's not like here where you can send your children to school and you don't pay a penny. You've got to pay school fees, then you've got to pay uniform and all this stuff. You've got to eat. Yeah, there's no such thing as job seekers allowance there. So that's why women are forced economically into those situations that if they really, if they had a choice, they wouldn't do.
I hear that. So it seems to me that a culture of like rites of passage and how to pick a particular person needs to be heavily influenced. Like, we have a new member by the name of Black Girl Magic, so we're just going to add Black Girl Magic to the form. Welcome, Black Girl Magic. If your microphone works, let us know.
Hey.
Hey, Aaron. Have you heard the topic thus far? Is there anything you'd like to add at all?
Hi Betty, it's Jarena.
Oh, hi, Dorina. Hi, hon.
Hi
Oh,
Raven.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Black Girl Magic Arena.
How's it going?
Very good. So Sister Bear, as usual, goes straight to the heart of issues, and she's highlighted that there's many challenges where black women have end up with very unmanly black men, and she's trying to find out what is the solution for that. And she's given some graphic details of some of the people in Nigeria who have who don't have much of a defense mechanisms for bad men. Now, what I've tried to highlight is the idea of it isn't a direct solution now for those who are in the challenge, but it's like a template where if a man touches you, you leave him automatically. This is a ruling that we community have, and that you get to know a man, you get to know his brothers, cousins, and dads, and so forth, and they agree to you that if ever he harms you, they come to stop him, right? But also, there's certain things that a man should be confessing to you early on and living up to make you know that this man is consistent. So if a man says, I'm not going to look after my children because we're not intimate, then they should be displaying this kind of behavior in other areas, and recognizing that might be key of making sure you're not permanently with a person who's giving you pain. Don't know if you have any opinions at all, but anything you want to say is always welcome, and you can always have the floor.
Thank you. Basically, naturally, I think black women, we don't hold back. We're very strong. So we're very vocal, and it's not in our nature to put up with that kind of nonsense. We I also believe that, okay, in financial situations like in Africa, because marriage is obviously a big deal. So even if they do have problems, the woman there's like a community who will try and solve the problem. So the elders will come round and they'll discuss what the problem is, and they'll tell the guy, tell the woman, okay, make up. Like there's that community thing, and this issue happens all over the world. There is friction between married couple. Men and women are different. First of all, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. There's that issue. So communication, but I don't want negative energy inflicted on the black family, because I feel like there's already propaganda against us. So I just think us as black people, we should try and encourage the black family and strengthen it, not give our enemies ammunition to undermine our family structure. Don't you think, Betty? What do you guys feel?
in relation to this case, no. The very fact that the abuser got a photo shoot when wife has still got a bloodied face, no.
Oh, is that the one? Is that the one in Nigeria? I saw that. Is that the
Yeah.
Nigerian one when they were made to make up?
Yeah, they were made to make
Oh.
like she's coerced. He's still got a job. It's disgusting.
Yeah, that's a culture problem, isn't it? Like that's in Nigeria, isn't it? An African
So
patriarchal sort of. Yeah, that's quite tricky. And she obviously looks miserable in the picture as well. You could see her face, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's unacceptable, and that's why, as regardless of whether someone's in Nigeria, Jamaica, or where it might be, we need to refresh the ideas of interaction. And one thing that I'm pushing forward, and I will continue to push forward, and have for many years, is there is very few situations, if any, where a man can actually harm a woman. Maybe he sees a woman killing a child, he's going to stop her. Maybe she's about to kill him with some kind of weapon or whatever. But generally, there should be no situation where a man harms a woman.
That's true. That's true. But however, there is a patriarchal society in Africa. We can't deny it. If you look at the UN, how many women is in the AU, in the African Union? There is a culture of toxic masculinity. That's a problem on the continent. And we also have to look at why this has evolved. If you look at how Western nations deal with Africa, they only speak to men. You don't see them speak to women. They encourage toxic masculinity. It's a problem, and it's a culture that we as Africans have to combat and educate. It comes through education, because their societies are heavily masculine in terms of the man is the breadwinner, the woman is a wife. That culture is very, very big in the continent, in the actual entire continent. So we need to change it as a culture.
Yeah, well, I agree in one sense that so the positions of people in households isn't necessarily I really analyze, because every position is there for a purpose, right? But what I would say, and if you choose to uphold that, that's fine. What I would say is representation is important. If there are no women speaking in global political events, then it's very easy to ignore the woman's needs, because, as usual, a man doesn't think like a woman.
And look at all these Western countries, coming to Africa to start wars. They know women are the primary victims of these wars that they inflict in Africa, but they don't care, because Black women are always collateral damage. They always have been collateral damage when they fight their stupid Cold War on the continent, whatever war it is that they have. They've used Africa as a place of battlefield. They've done that for decades. So that has seeped into the culture. Women are dismissed, their needs are not heard. UN go there abusing women. Yeah, so it's like Africa has been for a long time been a playground for all these, non anti-Ethiopian, anti-African entities that are coming on the continent, inflicting this. So we Africans are, starting to wake up and, address like the unequal relationship, especially with the trade. Africans want trade, but then they have their unfair trade laws, and Africans are starting to stand up for themselves. Like even Kagame, he's telling Europe, the EU, that please don't treat us like children. We will trade with you, but don't treat us like children. You're not some colonizer overlord. But that's the problem. They have this negative view of Africa, and it seeps in everything. So that culture of toxic masculinity and disregarding Black women and Black children in Africa obviously will affect the family structure.
Right. And have you ever heard or thought of any solutions for the particular areas where that's affected that might help? Because you're talking about toxic masculinity and children stuff. Is there any guy, if you were a governor, like a secret governor, and you had to write something, either a new law or a new way that people interact, what would you try to add or implement that might actually guarantee a better change?
You will see change when you see more women in powerful positions, women in government, women in office. When you see them being promoted, then women's rights will be improved.
So
that's the solution.
I would say, and I agree partially, and when I say partially, and this is part of the higher learning that I'm trying to push forward to everyone, is there's representation and then there's tangibility. And what I mean by that is what has been used against Black men or Black community, I should say, and I don't know if it's used against women or Black women, you have to let me know, but it's like sometimes people aren't put in place, and they're not put in place to represent the people who they are. They're put in place to continue certain kind of behavior patterns, and they become the face of lack of change, So my thing is, you definitely want a woman to represent women's issues, but she will have to be loyal to Black women's issues, and not necessarily a puppetress of a male concept.
Women are not puppets. A lot of the African women that have been given positions in power have made so much change. If you look at Ethiopia, they've elevated women in the Chief Justice, like the Lord Chief Justice of the legal is a woman, and she's already brought about so much change. The president is a woman. She's bringing about so much change. So African women, they do bring a lot of change, and we'd like to see that change in Nigeria as well. There's so many strong, capable Nigerian women that would do a much better job than the men. But, hopefully protests, even the protest, when you see the End SARS protest, a lot of women are joining in, a lot of mothers. That is what will bring change.
Right.
But so, Black Magic.
Go ahead.
Black Magic.
Yeah.
Would you say that although I I agree with you when it comes to the woman's role, because when you go back in time, the African woman, she's always ruled and had a code of conduct for her
Hmm.
people. Would you say that without a Pan-Africanist mindset for the African queens who have been put in leadership,
Hmm.
won't they still be used by the white supremacists?
The white supremacists hate black women. I mean, look at Winnie Mandela. She's written out of the history books for South Africa. All you see is Mandela. His statues in Parliament Square. You don't see Winnie Mandela's because they know black women, African women, have fought. You know, they've fought behind these movements. When the rebels were out in the jungle, when the Mau Mau of Kenya, the women were helping the rebels. They encourage warriors to fight for the country. So they know that they know African women have had armies in Nigeria and Benin. You know, the Domi warriors. What do they do to them? They sent them off to they sent the leader off to Madagascar, like as punishment. They know our history, so it's all about removing that and bringing it back to how it used to be.
But I was talking about a Pan-African mindset, Black Girl Magic. I hear where you're coming from. I was talking about having a mindset, yeah,
Mm.
that will diffuse the masculine and feminine odds at
Mhm.
war. You see, what you got to understand is that although, yes, we know about the ancient ways, that the black woman, black man, they're the only ones who work together with civilization. But now we've all been decoded. So my question to you was, respectfully, sisters, wouldn't it be better for the African woman if she's in charge? And I don't have a problem with that, as long as she has a Pan-African mindset. I repeat, I
Mhm.
don't have a problem with African women being in charge of anything. I'm a Pan-Africanist. I understand already that the black woman contributes 50% of civilization. However, wouldn't it be better for her to have a Pan-African mindset when she is in that position? That was my question.
I think they do. Most African people, women, do have a Pan African mindset. Let's not forget Africa is a continent, so there's only so much they can do in their small position that they're given. But I'm sure if a lot of African women were given, those posts, they will unite and come up with a Pan African mindset that you suggest.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jarino. But I think also the situation on the ground is black women and African women don't have a lot of power. They don't
Mhm.
have a lot. If you like you said in the African Union, most of the positions are held by African men.
Yeah,
So
and
the
and
leaders are black African men.
yeah, and that's what the EU people who fund it. That's what they want. They know what they're doing. They don't want black women in there.
Yeah, it's true. Because how much percentage of EU funded? It's more than 50% in it that
Yeah.
EU funds of the African Union.
They are more threatened by black women than black men. Let me tell you something. That's why they are on our case. They worry about black women because we have the capability of starting movements. It's a fact, guaranteed, and they're already feeling threatened by us. I mean, do you feel it, Betty? I mean, you talk political stuff, and she gets so much hate.
Why would you prop all these dictatorships and despot regimes in Africa that are run by like people like Blaise Compaoré, that guy that arranged for Tom Sankara to be killed
Hmm.
because he spent 3 years improving the rights of the people, especially women?
Same thing. That why do you think the West loved the TPLF of Ethiopia, the Tigray regime, that the most heinous, backstabbing, nasty rebels? You have BBC supporting them because what have the TPLF done? They've literally sold Ethiopian women to work as maids in the Middle East. This is what they want. They like that, you
Yeah,
know.
that's
They
true.
traffic people.
Abiy's regime, because how long has Abiy been in power? He's not been in power long, but prior to that, like you said, how many of our Ethiopian sisters were sold like cattle to the Middle East,
Exactly.
abused?
Exactly, and the press didn't say anything. But as soon as Abiy appoints a Ethiopian female as president, it's a problem. As soon as a Lord Chief Justice of the law is a female, then they start worrying. They like us in that position.
But even the achievements of Nigerian and Ethiopian women. When that joint flight, a whole female flight that flew from the capital of Ethiopia to Nigeria, crewed by African women from the pilot to the ground. How many times did you see the Europeans celebrate that?
Exactly.
Tell you about all the bad things that are going on in Nigeria and Ethiopia. But when African women and they come together and they do something like that, a huge achievement, just for an Ethiopian woman to be a pilot, I didn't hear anything. And it's a whole female crew. The only time I saw it was on Ethiopian news and Nigerian news.
African news only. It does not leave African news. But now they how many times do they like talk about this battle in Tigray every 5 seconds, every second? Oh, it's war. Exaggerating, fabricating. So their propaganda piece is doing it on purpose.
Yeah, like you said, and just the image of the African woman as weak. Because I was really shocked to even know that a whole flight of African women flying the whole flight.
Yeah.
And then they went from, I think it's Thailand as well.
They're flying all over.
Yeah, and it's just like, there's one thing, because they've like, especially in a country like Ethiopia, you know, we've had the famine, you know, constant telling us about the starving children. But like you said, they just want to show you the story of the African women that are being brutalized. But when the strong woman comes and she achieves something, they have nothing to say. Because it's the West, the media in the West is controlled by white middle class men.
Exactly. It's the same thing with Nigeria. How many times they were going on about the Boko Haram women bring back our girls? I honestly believe that whole thing was planned. Like, I believe they paid these Islamists to kidnap those Nigerian girls.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know, if you go on global research, there's certain different like places like Qatar of being accused of funding terrorism. Even Donald Trump said about Qatar, you know, Saudi and Western interference, as well as even the former president of Nigeria, Jonathan, mentioned that he had sympathetic parliamentary people who were sympathetic to Boko Haram's cause. Basically, meaning that they would hire thugs to win elections and, you know, fund Boko Haram.
It's true. It's true. I mean,
in Nigeria, you know, the stability, you know, just not the lack of security, to break down security. And this is on record. If you go on the BBC News, you'll hear Goodluck Jonathan accusing some of his people in his government of supporting Boko Haram.
So
even
true.
Airways was accused of that. Turkish Airways, the Egyptians found out that Turkish Airways, which is owned partly by the state, was flying into Nigeria to give to Boko Haram.
Turkey, I swear, they need to stick their behind out of African issue. They're currently in Somalia trying to be friends with the Somalians because they're Muslim, trying to turn them into jihadis.
They're flying weapons in there as well.
Yeah.
One went to Somalia. The Somalian president was said in English that Boko Haram went to Somalia to get trained by Al-Shabaab.
They do so much stuff behind the scene, literally. In fact, the thing is, the Somalians don't even like them. They're very into their culture. That, you know, even though, you know, they may have had wars with Ethiopia in the past, they still consider Ethiopians as their people. Like, this is how stupid they are. But they want to divide Ethiopia and Somalia by religion. Like, they're so they do so much stuff.
Yeah, definitely. But like you
said, Turkey's a white country. They're white people.
Yeah, by Asiatic people. But yeah, it's just we've got so much interference in the African story and the black story. There's people, like when Raven said at the start of the show, they are people that profit from black people fighting each other, whether it's in the diaspora or in Africa.
It's so true. I mean, like, even Kenya, you know, it was a colony of Britain, but look at the news that comes out of the Kenyan BBC. They get like women to talk about prostitutes, like, so negative. Like, even Kenyan people are like, why do you always write negative stuff about a country? It's like,
yeah, that's it. And then you don't talk about the Kenyan women pilots. You know, just like you said, balance the stories out. Like, you're like BBC Africa. I can't even watch that channel. It's so negative.
So negative. Like, they talk about Kenyan infiltratory, something like that. just negative nonsense.
But then it goes back to what Brother Raven was saying in it, the empathy and sympathy. Can you really expect non-Africans to keep it fair though? I mean, politically and that, they're not going to keep it fair. This is what we don't understand. They're never going to keep it fair. So can we really expect them to do a fair story on the African woman fighting the planes? Now, me personally, and that I understand political science, they're never going to do it, and they should not do it either because they have a code of conduct.
I just hope that diaspora blacks, because they also are affected by the negative imagery of Africa. They don't understand the games behind the scene, so they also have a point of view of Africa as this negative place, and it's affecting diaspora blacks because they're not aware of what's going on.
Is it Jarina's sister? Am I saying it right? Correctly?
Yeah.
Jarina?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if it's your first time listening to the show, but what I would say is one thing we offer to people who speak out. First, to come on board, we say thank you for joining, because when you join in, you're new, you inspire others to join in because everyone has opinion, but some people feel they might be slightly intimidated to come live on the stream. But what I always do is I offer and extend that if you ever want to talk about any topic to do with Betterment, and you've mentioned a lot, to be honest, and things you want to talk about, you're welcome to open the show one week or next week or any week. And then basically you open the show, you can speak for anything from 5 minutes to half an hour or how long you need. And then afterwards we open the panel, people can jump on and talk about your topic. That if you ever want to do that, you're welcome to do that. You just have to let me know.
Thank you. Sure, I'll let you know if I have any ideas.
Yeah, you're always welcome, and tell your friends as well. But we're going to wrap up now, guys, because we're coming to the end of the show. So if everyone could just say their last final thoughts about this week, and then we'll wrap up. And it was great. Hopefully we meet everyone again next week with some new speakers. So in any order, go ahead.
Go on, Betty.
Go on.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Dorina, for coming. And I have one more friend that I want to call Tashika, but she just had the baby like a month or so ago. I know she listens to the show, but hopefully she says she's going to come when things calm down a bit for her. But yeah, I just want people to understand that, you can't build the black community up and black betterment if you're not concerned with the safety of black women. If you've got black men that are mistreating black women, yeah, you can't build a black community with just black men. These black women must be safe. And I think too often people focus on the black story, or it's his story quite often. And it's about time we started to hear her story too. I'm not looking for black women to lead as such. I'm looking for, it's a partnership, people.
Yeah.
Partnership. That's what a marriage is. It's not one person leading, it's a partnership. We coexist. Yeah, so that's what I'm looking for anyway. So please have the time to think about black women and what you can do to support them, their children, and their safety.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Brother Cal?
Yeah, I just want to say that, in order for the black man and the black woman to come together, they have to immerse themselves into Pan-Africanism. It doesn't matter who's in charge, whether it's the original woman or the original man. If they don't have a Pan-African Garveyism mindset towards the best interests of black people, it's not going to work out anyway. The Europeans, the Asians, the Middle East will use that bitterness that we have for each other, unfortunately, and play that against us. And I truly believe that for us to go forward, we need to practice the principles of Pan-Africanism, Garveyism.
And last but not least, Sister Jarina, hopefully will join next week or the week after. Your last final.
Thank you for having me. Very good discussion. I just want people, black people, to realize that black men came from black women, and also non-black people to understand that these black men that you adore and put on a pedestal, they came from black women. I think there's a disconnect. They don't realize that black men came from black women, and I just think we need to start educating these people. That's it.
Thank you, guys. And so hopefully next week everyone can join us. It'll be a nice week. See you guys next week.
Good
Goodbye.
night. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Brother Raven, take care.